Okay, hello. Yes, here we are with our next pre-teach video, and this one is focusing on percentages. So I really need you to spend a little bit of your half-term holiday just practicing some work on percentages. Okay, and here we got a pre-teach, and we're going to be looking at this when we come back after half-term as well. So it's really important you get to grips with it. So we're going to be looking at finding percentages of amounts, but we need to understand what the word percent means. And here we've got what percent means. Percent, think of that word cent that's in there. We know we've been talking about that when we're dealing with centimetres. Cent is out of 100, okay? And percentages is just another way of looking at fractions and looking at decimals. They're all the same thing, but they can be written in different ways. So where we've been comparing fractions and decimals, we can also compare fractions and decimals with percentages and write them in as percent as well. And here's an example. So we've got 40% here, and we know that percentage is out of 100. So if I want to just change that to a fraction, well, I just know that it's 40 out of 100. And we know that our denominator tells us the total number of equal parts. And so for percentage, it's always going to be out of 100 parts. And in this case, it's 40%. So I've got 40 out of those 100 parts. Okay? Now, there we have 40 out of 100. We know how to change that into a decimal as well. And if we simplified 40 out of 100, it would be 4 over 10, which we know is 4/10. So I can change that into a decimal by writing 0.4. Okay, so they're all the same. They're all completely equivalent. They're exactly the same number. They're just written a different way. Down here, we've got 3%. So we know percentage is out of 100. So to change that to a fraction, it's just going to be 3 over 100, because percentage has 100 parts, and this number, 3%, is 3 out of 100. And of course, that's really easy to change into a decimal as well. It's going to be, 0.03. So 3 in my hundredths column, because it's 300ths, okay? So that's it, really, with percentages. You can change them into fractions or decimals, as long as you understand that percent means out of 100. So we need to know that in order to find percentages of amounts, okay? Now we've been doing lots of work, and we're brilliant, all of us now, at finding fractions of amounts. So it's very similar when we're looking at finding percentages of amounts. So here we've got find 40% of £200. Okay, we're going to work out how much that is. If I had 40% of £200, how much would I have? Now, the strategy to follow when finding percentages of amounts, a really good strategy is to find, in most cases, is to find 10% first. Because finding 10% is really easy. Now, 10% is the same as 1/10. And all we've got to do to find 1/10 of anything is to divide it into 10 equal parts. Okay, so to divide by 10. So I'm going to use our bar model, just like I would if I was finding a fraction of an amount. I'm going to use my bar model to find a percentage of amount as well. And because I'm dividing first of all by 10, I'll be dividing it into my bar into 10 equal parts. Okay, so I'm going to draw my bar. Obviously you might want to use a ruler and a pencil. And I'm going to divide that into 10 equal parts as best I can. It may not be completely accurate with my drawing, but as long as we know they're equal parts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now we have 10 equal parts. So I'm just going to follow my normal pattern. My whole bar represents £200. 200 up here. And I've divided into 10 equal parts. So that looks as a calculation as 200 divided by 10. Now, of course, we all know how to divide by 10. We know what happens to our digits when we divide by 10. They're getting 10 times smaller, which means they're all moving one place over to the right. So when we divide 200 by 10, we get 20. Really easy, okay? So we're going to write 20 into each of these equal parts. And we know that there's 10 of them, because 10 groups of 20 gets me back to my whole bar, which is 200. I'm going to put 20 into each of those parts, okay? Now, each of these parts represent 1/10, which also, as we know, as a percentage, is 10%. So each of these is 10%. Now, you don't have to do this every time, but because it's the first time round, I'm going to write that underneath each of these. Okay, 10%. Each of these equal sections represents 10%. You can see why we wouldn't do this every time, because it would take a very long time. But just so we really understand it, I'm going to do it this time. So we've got 10%, 20%, 30%, 40%, 50%, 60%, 70%, 80%, 90%, and the whole 100%, which is £200. So now that I've divided them into equal sections and found 10%, it's really easy for me to find 40%. It's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4 groups. 10%, 20%, 30%, 40%. So I'm going to find 4 groups. And each of them is 20. So it's 4 groups of 20. Which of course, we all know will be 80. Okay? So when I've found 40% of £200, I know that 40%, 40% of £200 equals £80. £80. Okay? Right, so hopefully that makes sense. I think I've got a second example. Yes, I have. But let's have a look at another example and just go through the same strategy just all over again. So here we have find 35%. And remember, it could be of lots of different things. So this example, it's find 35% of 400 grams. Okay? We follow the same steps. Just quickly to remind you that, of course, we know of means the same as times. Okay? So it could be written find 35% times 400 grams. It doesn't matter which way it comes up. You know that they mean the same thing. And that means of as well. Okay? I haven't done a very good time sign, but you know what I mean. So finding 35% of 400 grams. I'm going to find 10% first, okay? And I know that that means I'm going to divide my 400 grams into 10 equal parts. So I'm going to choose a different colour. Let's go for green this time. And I'm going to draw my bar. And I know that my bar represents my total, and my total is 400 grams, so I'm going to write that on top. And I need to, if I write my calculation down at the same time, I'm not keeping it all in my head. I've taken my 400 grams and I'm finding 10% first, which means I'm dividing by 10, because all we have to do to find 10% of anything is divide by 10. So now I need to divide my 400 into 10 equal parts. So what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 equal parts. And of course, again, I know how to divide by 10, so that's really easy for me to do. 400 divided by 10 will equal 40, because I know that that means my digits are getting 10 times smaller, which means I'm moving each digit one place to the right. So each equal part is worth 40 grams. 40 grams into each of the 10 equal parts. Right, and again, I could write 10% under each of these because I know each of these equal parts represent 10%, but I'm not going to this time. So I've got to find 35%. So this is 10%, this is 10%, each of these is 10%. So it's going to be 3 groups will get me 30%, 10%, 20%, 30%. So that's 3 groups. And then I've got a bit of a problem because it's not 40%. That would be 4 groups. It's 35%, and we'll talk about that in a second. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to work out 3 groups, okay? Because that would be 10%, 20%, 30%. So it's 3 groups of 40. Now I know that 3 groups of 4 is 12. So I know that if I times that by 10, 3 groups of 40 will be 120. Okay, so far I know that 30% is 120 grams. Okay, but I need to find that 5%. Let's have a think how we're going to do that. Each of these sections is 10%, is equal to 10%. So all I've got to do to get from 10% to 5% is halve it. Okay, So if 40 represents 10%, then half of that, 20, is going to equal 5%. Okay? So all I need to do is add on 20 to my 30%, which is 120, and that will give me 35%. Okay? So 20, another 20 grams, going to make 140 grams. Okay? Right, I'm just going to go over that again because there's a lot to take in there. And actually I will write 10% on top of these just to make sure we've got that, because this one was a bit trickier because we were finding that extra 5%. So remember, let me just write all these 10% in. Remember, you don't need to do this every time. You might want to do it to help you until you get really familiar with it. Once you know what you're doing, you don't have to write that in. So, to find 35% of 400 grams, I drew out my bar, which represented my number, 400 grams. I divided it by 10, so I could work out 10%, okay? Because remember, the whole thing is 100%. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, because percentage is out of 100. So I divided by 10 to get 10%, and when I divided 400 by 10, it got me to 40. So each of these parts was 40. And then I needed to work out, well, what was 35%, because that was my question. So that's 3 groups, that's 30%. So 3 groups of 40 is 120. And then I had that 5% to find. I know that each section is 10%, and 10% is 40, which means 5% would be half of that, so 5% is 20. So I added on that extra 20, and so 35% of 400 grams equals 140 grams. Okay? Right, so you might need to rewind and watch that a few times just to get the hang of it, okay? Good, so we can find any percentage by finding 10% first and then working from there. We could even work out 1% and 2%. So have a little think. I'm not going to tell you that now because that would be too much information to take on, but you might be able to work out. If I know 10%, what would I do to work out 2%? I'll leave that with you to have a think about over half term. Now, in most cases, we find 10%. Sometimes it might be easier to change your percentage into a fraction and just find the fraction of the amount if you're more confident with it. And these 3 percentages, 25%, 50%, and 75%, are easy percentages to change into fractions. Okay, so if we look at 25%, 4 groups of 25 make 100. So 25% written as a fraction is the same as 1/4. Okay, 50% written as a fraction is the same as half, because 50 is half of 100. And 75% written as a fraction is 3/4. Okay, because you've got 25% is 1/4. So 3 groups of 25 is 75. So it's three groups of your 1/4. So it's 3/4. Okay. So for these percentages, if you're asked to find 25% of a number, or 50% of a number, or 75% of a number, it might be easier for you. You can to change it into a fraction and find that of an amount. Okay. There is an example here. I'll just show you what I mean by that really quickly. So find 25% of 60. Now I could find 10% and do my bar and do it the way I've been showing you, and that's fine. You still get the same answer. But I might also change 25% into a fraction. And so instead of doing it as 25%, I might find 1/4 of 60 pounds. Okay, and we're quite good at doing that now. I draw my bar. My bar represents 60. My denominator tells me how many equal parts it's divided into. It's divided into 4 equal parts. So it's 60 shared into 4 equal parts. So I would do 60 divided by 4. And when you work that out, there are 15 groups of 4, or 4 groups of 15 in 60. So each of my sections is worth 15. And it's only one of them I need. So my answer is 15. Okay, so finding 25% of 60 equals 60 pounds equals 15 pounds. And if I show you that very quickly with, if I just did it as a percentage, you'll see that you get the same answer. So I've got my bar represents £60. I'm dividing it into 10 equal parts. If I'm just using it as a percentage, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 60 divided into 10 equal parts means that, again, I just need to move my digits one place. That's going to be 6. So each part is going to be worth 6. And because they're all 10%, I would need 2 of them. 10% and 10% will be 20%. That would be 12. And then I've got that 5% to find. So I know that 6 represents 10%. So if I half that, that will be 3. So 3 equals 5%. And 12 plus the 3 is 15. So use 2 ways of doing it. You'll still get the same answer. But I find for these 3 percentages, 25, 50, and 75, it's easier to convert them first into a fraction and then find a fraction of an amount. Okay, well, that was a lot to take on board, so you may need to re-watch this video a couple of times, but let's just recap. Percentage is out of 100, okay? So when you're converting it to a fraction, your denominator is 100 every time, okay? When finding a percentage of an amount, it's the best thing to do is to find 10% first, because all you've got to do to find 10% is divide by 10. If it's 25%, 50%, or 75%, you might find it easier to convert these percentages to their equivalent fraction first. 1/4, 1/2, 3/4, and find the fraction of an amount. Right, hopefully you understand all that. I've got 4 questions here for you to have a go at over half term. Send me a message on the blog to let me know how you got on with them, if there's anything you don't understand.